all right. I remember when I first was introduced to this band, it was one of the greatest concerts I've ever been to because it was three brilliant, like, prog tech death metal groups. We had Fallujah, we had Rings of Saturn, and we had the Faceless. And that entire night, I was just like blown away by all of this really intense, crazy style of music. And up until that point, I never really listened to any of their music. And so when somebody else asked me what I thought about the concert, I was like, it was real good. I barely remember anything, but man, it were intense. So yeah, let's just talk about this one. Xenotaph by Fallujah. So Fallujah is an American technical death metal band getting their start in California back in 2007. They have gone through many different band members. At this point, you can basically just call it Scott Castar and Friends. Scott is really the only persistent member, and it's kind of his show. You know, he's lead guitars and backing vocals, and he dabbles with the rhythm guitars, but really it's his guitar work that is the star of the show. The amount of technical prowess that is needed for this project is absolutely insane. You know, his ability to command the fret on the board is almost next to none. You know, like, I feel like a lot of these technical death metal bands kind of have the same flavor, you know, the same kind of feeling towards it. But the thing that puts Fallujah a little bit above and distinguishes themselves with everybody else is some of the harmonizations that they have within the vocal work, some of the really interesting passages and progressions that they have within the music, because it's not just total frepping all the time. And as well, very meaty and very apparent licks within the guitar works. So, yeah, joining Scott on this one, we have Kyle Schaffer, I believe is how you pronounce it, on lead vocals, and he came on the last record. And in fact, I think this is one of the few times where they actually have carryover from the last record. So the last record being Empyrean, and yeah, I think most of, if not all of the individuals that were on that record also find themselves on this one. And there was a big turnover of individuals. So Kyle came onto that one, Evan Brewer came on bass, and Sam Moradian on rhythm guitars all came in on that 2022 release. And they're feeling a little bit more comfortable, I feel, on this record. There's definitely a little bit more synergy between everybody. The newcomer on this one, because of course on a Fallujah record, you gotta have somebody new. We've got Kevin Alexander on drums, and he's been touring with the band since last year, but he's made his standout breakout performance here on this record as their studio full-time drummer. And I want to give Kevin his dues because, man, the boy can keep up with some of these intense rhythm styles, that balls-to-the-wall breakneck speed metal that Fallujah loves to do. And I absolutely, you know, I love it. I love it. This album itself is, I don't want to say necessarily paint by numbers Fallujah, but if you've heard a Fallujah record up until this point, you kind of know what to expect on this one. There's a few moments on here that I feel they're kind of taking some of their contemporaries' initiative and some of their flavors. You know, I love more of the harmonizations that we found on this one, specifically on Kaleidoscopic Waves, as well as Sleep Through the Portal and Breathe. These tracks have a lot more of that really deep harmonizations that I really love within the technical death metal. It's one of the things that I love, you know, because there's these mouth-watering, face-melting guitar licks, and then you have these heavenly vocalizations that I absolutely adore and I absolutely love. You know, they're not just screaming their balls off the entire time. They're bringing it back down to a center and allowing the music to really flourish and find its roots. I also love how this album starts off with In the Stars We Drown. It starts off very atmospheric, very intimate. You know, it's just this atmospheric mood lighting kind of essence, and then we're slowly brought into the fold within the power metal. You know, it doesn't hit you right over the head from the beginning notes. It kind of allows you to acclimatize a little bit, so it's a little friendly for new initiatives within this band, but once it hits hard. And of course, I gotta gush about that, and that is found throughout most of the tracks on here. It's not just volume 10 all the time. We do have a number of peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows, and that is found within the title track, the final track, at 7.5 minutes long, which allows this track to develop a little bit more. We have a lot more of those ebb and flow moments that's not just, like I said, balls to the wall insane from beginning to end. But of course, all of the signature sounds of Fallujah are still here. Obviously, we have the face melting chords, but we also have those chuggings, and I really love within Labyrinth of Stone where it has that root of that chug that allows for the more complex styles of music and guitar work to play on top of it. So you're being inundated with both. You've got those chugs, and this is also found within Crystalline Veil, that doesn't let you off the hook. It's always kind of constraining and always kind of constricting, and it just allows for a really powerhouse of a track. And talking about that big wind up and punch, let's talk about the Parasitic Dream. I love how intense and how aggressive and relentless this track is, especially at the beginning, and then by the end we get that payoff. And this is one of the things that I love about Fallujah. It's the build-ups and payoffs, and when we get into that payoff at the end, I'm like, oh right, they know how to construct a really great track. They know how to do those build-ups and payoffs. It's literally the cocking of the fist and the punch, and man, it brings us to such a brilliant finale. That brings us right into the Obsidian Architect. That kind of follows suit. It's intense, it's aggressive, it never lets you go. It brings us to Xenotaph, the title track, which I've already talked about and I already gushed about. So in the end, Xenotaph, I think, is one of Fallujah's strongest records. I feel as if newcomers to the band will really appreciate it, especially if you love that really aggressive, really intense songwriting if you really love that aggressive guitar licks, if you love that technical playing style, I think you're really, really going to love this. Do know going in that this is a technical death metal album, so if you don't like the growls, if you don't like the blast beats, if you don't like the aggressive styles of metal, maybe stay clear of this one, But if all that excites you, then I highly recommend checking this one out. I don't necessarily think that there's anything groundbreaking on this one. I don't know if there's anything on this record that would compare to In the Flesh or their first track of Harvest, the Harvest Wound. But I do think that this is the strongest album that they've put out from start to finish. Because there were a couple clunkers, if I'm being perfectly honest, on The Flesh Prevails and the Harvest Womb. But I think that this album has the most consistency to all of their records. There's no dips or dives or any tracks on here that I'm like, not quite sure about that one. This one is probably their strongest and most mature record to date, So, in the end, I will say Xenotaph by Fallujah is an album that I would absolutely download. This one's a great one. I think we're being gluttons at this point for progressive death metal, and I absolutely love this one. I'm really excited to see what they've got, coming to us in the future, and hopefully we won't have too many more band member change-ups, because I think who they have in the band lineup at the moment is a really star caliber of musicians, and I really hope that Scott will allow a little bit more input from his bandmates to help construct and help build a brilliant and fantastic record. But hey, I'm not going to sneeze at what we have right here, because it's a really good treat, But that's what I've got in the end for Xenotaph from Fallujah. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And that's where I'm going to leave you for today. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.